Released as part of the Masters of Cinema series from Eureka Video, this stunningly presented box set of Louis Feuillade crime serials is a must for any true cinephile. With over 30 hours of viewing pleasure, and that's not including the special features, fans can enjoy the gorgeously 4K restored works of this celebrated French filmmaker, released on the centenary of his passing. The collection includes titles such as Fantomas, Les Vampires, Judex, and T-Min, four of his most renowned crime epics made between 1913 and 1918 that have left an impact on pulp culture the world over. Of course, we can't forget just how important these titles, and Feuillade himself, were to future filmmakers such as Fritz Lang, Alfred Hitchcock, and many others, inspiring tales of mass vigilantes such as Dr. Mabuse and Diabolique, but also those created for film, television, radio, and publications over the decades that followed. Born in 1873, Feuillade had shown signs as a creator from an early age. After the deaths of both parents, he headed to Paris in the hope of becoming a successful writer, and after a few years of struggle with a few bits of journalistic work keeping him afloat, by 1905, Louis got lucky when he sold 2 scripts to Gaumont Studios, although turned down their offer of directing them due to concerns of his finances. But almost 2 years later, Louis felt confident enough to step up to the mark. Hired as Gaumont's artistic director, it was clear that this young talent had something. Of course, this is quite clearly confirmed by Feuillade having directed over 630 films between 1906 and 1924, although he did claim before passing in 1925 that he had made closer to 800. Regardless of which number is correct, it's still an incredible achievement which very few have managed to match or even come close to. Fantomas is the first series in the set, Feuillade's first big masterpiece, and a crime serial that is beautifully done. An epic that runs for 337 minutes if watched all at once, Fantomas was adapted from a series of popular novels by authors Marcel Alain and Perry Silvestri. Starring René Navarre as the criminal mastermind known as Fantomas, the story tells of his escape from prison and the crimes that he commits while the police are hot on his tail. For its time, the Fantomas serial was considered a work of genius and is still held in very high regard today by many. Wonderfully shot, brilliantly directed, and gripping even over 100 years later, Fantomas is an experience and a highly enjoyable introduction to Feuillade's work. Les Vampires follows, another silent crime serial which focuses on a journalist and his partner who attempt to uncover and stop a criminal gang known as the Vampires. Coming in close to 400 minutes in length when watched straight through, and often considered to be one of the longest films ever made, Les Vampires is very similar in style to Fantomas and is often considered part of an unconnected trilogy by Feuillade, with Judex completing that. While I didn't find it quite as gripping as Fantomas, I still found myself engrossed and excited to see the next episode, each of which get better and better. Possibly inspired by the true-life antics of the Bonnot gang, who went on a wild crime spree in Paris just a couple of years before, Les Vampires was shot during the First World War, which came with its own set of problems. I must also note how this film's antagonist, Irma Vep, was brought back to life in 1996 by French filmmaker Olivier Assayas in the film of the same name, starring Hong Kong superstar Maggie Cheung, with the director returning to the subject matter in 2022 to remake it as an American TV miniseries. Judex has always been seen as the final piece of Louis Feuillade's crime serials, most notably because it is made with the same style and gutso as the previous two. Predating famous American pulp heroes The Shadow and Batman by a number of years, Judex tells the adventures of the titular hero and his attempts to stop crime, take revenge against a corrupt banker, and deal with forbidden love. Called a cinematic novel by its creator, Judex was made in answer to the criticisms by police and officials that claimed Fantomas and Les Vampires glorified outlaws and criminals. So, in turn, Feuillade gave them a hero of sorts, albeit one that used the same sinister trappings of the popular and flamboyant villains from that era. Starring French matinee idol René Cress as Judex and popular actress Musadora, who had just starred in Les Vampires as Irma Vep, the film carries the shortest running time of the supposed trilogy at 300 minutes. Of course, as with those before it, this was released in chapters, as done so here in this collection, so that its complex plot could be understood a little easier. Interestingly, the story of the film would be published weekly in a local newspaper to coincide with the cinematic release of each chapter. Possibly the first comic book hero movie ever made, Judex makes for a great watch with its exciting performances, nice cinematography, and tidy direction. And finally, we have T-Min, a fun 418 minutes on the adventures of Jacques d'Athis, a French man who has returned from his travels to Indochina, accompanied by a young Asian woman known as T-Min. Unbeknownst to him, Athis has returned with a book that contains a coded message revealing some government intelligence and the location of hidden treasure. This, in turn, makes him and T-Min the target of spies and villains who will do what they can to get their hands on the book. Returning as the hero of the show once again is René Crest, while Mary Harold stars as the titular character of the piece. I quite enjoyed T-Min. It was a nice change of pace to the other titles in the collection, running at a steady pace with some exciting action moments, a great cast, and fascinating locations. It is most definitely another masterpiece by Feuillade, and a film that shows the progression and growth of this long-celebrated filmmaker. While tongue-in-cheek at times, its well-woven plot is far from strenuous by today's standards, yet it still offers up just as much excitement as any other Hollywood blockbuster can do today. Overall, this is absolutely one of my favourite Blu-ray releases from Eureka Video. Each film series is gloriously restored in 4K that makes it hard to believe that each of them were made well over 100 years ago. While there are plenty of informative audio commentaries on selected episodes throughout the collection by Tim Lucas or David Kalat, other special features include interviews with film critics Kim Newman, Neil Brand, Tony Raines, and Pamela Hutchinson, and a great video essay on Les Vampires by Elizabeth Ezra. Inside its beautifully designed box, you'll also find a fantastic fold-out poster and an incredible limited edition 100-page book on Louis Feuillade and his films. Louis Feuillade, The Complete Crime Serials 1913 to 1918 is a highly recommended piece of physical media that won't disappoint and keep you entertained for a couple of days at least.